Right. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these sash out and we're going to put them back in, because that's exactly what you're doing when you install a window, our retrofit window system. And let's just talk about getting that window out of there. First of all, what holds the lower sash in place is the interior stop. And this is either nailed on or screwed on, but figure out how it's put on and just pry it off. And that takes 2 or 3 minutes at the most. So you get the stop off from all the way around the perimeter, and then the rope will be hanging down here if you do have ropes. And I just snip it off as close as I can to the bottom here, bottom sash, and then gently let those weights come back down to the bottom. If they fall a little bit, okay, but you don't want them running, 3 or 4 feet down and pounding into your jamb, because it might be fragile. So anyway, once that's done, pull the sash out and set it to the side. That's the lower sash. Then we have the upper sash, and that is held in by the parting stops. The parting stops will be continuous all the way around. They won't have these gaps here like we do. But that's pretty easy to get out also. If you're going to waste the sash anyway, just take your oscillating saw and just cut away this protrusion here. Just kind of dive in and create enough space to be able to pop this out. A lot of times it'll be painted in. You may need to go in and cut the paint with a utility knife. But what I like to do is run screws into this, not clear through the jamb. That's in a dado about about 3/8 of an inch deep. So just run some screws in here. Then you can use a hammer and just kind of pry that out. And so you'll just pry that whole parting stop out all the way around. If you break it, that's okay, because we gave you new parting stops. So the parting stops are out. You don't have to remove the head stop if you don't want to, because everything should fit right back in the way it was. That's the head parting stop there. And then once that's done, you just pull the lower sash out. It's going to have ropes also, so you might want to pull it all the way down here to the bottom, snip the ropes, then let them gently down. So now you have your sash, upper and lower sash, loose, and you have an empty jamb. Now, a couple things we need to do to prepare the jamb. If you have any remediation to do, you might do that now and work on the sill a little bit and make sure it's nice and smooth. If they're not, we could have probably provided you with some tricoya, 1/4 inch tricoya that goes on here that will cover up your sill, make a nice smooth surface. So adhere that to that. Then the next step is to do a little testing here. We're going to take a piece of our parting stop and put back in here. And we're going to take the lower sash, the new lower sash, and lay it in here the way it goes. I'll do 2 things myself. I will mark where that sash lands, where the top of it is. And I'll also mark on the sash, this is going to be standing up a little proud. It's going to be standing up like this, because the meeting rail has a projection on it. And what we have to do is we have to notch it out just a little bit to accommodate those parting stops. And when you have the sash in your hand, you know what I'm talking about. But I come in here and I just put a mark where that intersects, where the meeting rail lands on the parting stop, because you're going to have to notch that out. So once you mark that, and this is a little bit of a critical step. Once you mark that, take your oscillating saw or a back saw or some kind of nice saw system, and come in here and cut right along that, and then like this, so that you pop that little bit off. Again, that's where your parting stop is going to be. And the closer you get that, the better. You want it close so that you have little air infiltration but you also have to have it loose enough to where it's going to operate and not catch if the jams bowed a little bit. So we will have come in, and I always also take we put the weather stripping in, and I pull that back out of the way before I cut that. And then when I put it back, I leave it just a hair long, so that it just does make a little bit of a seal itself. So we did that with the upper sash. We got the parting stop with the meeting rail cut back for the parting stop. We marked it. Then we need to come in with the oscillating saw and cut this dado. Our springs are going to fit in this little slot right here that you make. We were able to do it in the shop, so it makes it a little easier, but it's not hard at all to do. Now it's going to look funny because when you plunge this in, it's going to be wider than it needs to be, but that's okay. If you're doing several windows, you probably ought to make a little template. What you want to do is you want to center this slot on the lower sash. So this needs to be in the middle of the lower sash. And again, a template is a good thing to use for that. So once you get that mark, you just come in and saw that out. It takes 2 or 3 minutes per side. Pop that out. Make sure you're going in straight. If anything, you want to angle down a little bit and up a little bit so that it's bigger than. You don't want to force these in. And it doesn't really matter if it's super tight or not. It can be loose. These are just going to ride in there loosely anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's not that critical, but it does have to be done. So the next thing we do is come in with the upper sash, and we're going to do the same thing in terms of those marks. We're going to mark it on both sides where that parting stop is, and then we're going to again saw that back, saw right along your mark, and then come in and try to keep it flush with this. Cut it this way. That'll really pop right off because it's 2 pieces, so it shouldn't be too hard to get off of there. Come in and cut that. So now again, we've just notched the sash for the parting stop. It has to be done, and the closer you get it, the better. But we provided some little rubber blocks to put in there that are actually 1/8 of an inch bigger than what they need to be, so that it'll actually make a seal for you. And you have a 1/16 of an inch or more to play in terms of how you do that. But the tighter that it is, the better seal you're going to have. So, a couple ways we're ready to put the window back together. A couple ways to do that is to go ahead and put the stops in. You can run those in with a trim screw, or you can shoot them with the nail gun. Doesn't really matter much. And then you fit this back in, your upper sash. Slide that up there. And then what do we do with the blocks? Oh, here we go. Here are those rubber blocks I was telling you about. Stick these in here. Make yourself a nice seal with them. They're 1/2 inch wide, just like your parting stop dado. Then you put now these are beveled on the end. So you want to put those in there. Look at the bevel, there we go, like that. The upper sash is now in place. Now, what we'll do is we'll put the spring in here for the lower sash on both sides. And then we're going to bend this up so that it comes in like this. If you're doing many windows the same size, I'd recommend that you make a little jack to put under it to hold this lower sash in place while you're doing all this. Now, what I like to do too is we've got seals on the side of this, and they should be facing, both of them should be facing inwards. But what happens is when you try to put this down, that seal on the upper side wants to curl under it. And so this will help prevent that. So we pull this off on both sides a little bit. Your weather stripping on the bottom. Fold these springs over. And what I like to do is I'll pull this down a little bit. And I like to put something back here so that when I pull that tight and bend it, it's as far in as it could possibly be. And you just run a screw through this hole into the sash and then put the weather stripping back in. And we just installed a window. Now, all you have to do is put the stops back on or put new stops on. A lot of people want to go ahead and put new stops on while they're at it. Now, when you do that though, I do recommend taking a credit card or something that's about 1 millimeter thick and forcing that down so that it's nice and tight, but when you take that out, it's going to have enough play so it'll travel without friction. So that's all there is to it.